Don't treat every child the same. I know that sounds obvious, but it is unbelievably important and has incredible consequences if you do not listen to this advice. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch points out Yaakov and Esau, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is righteous, he's pious, he's contemplative, he's the man of truth, and so on and so forth. He's the ancestor of the Jewish people. He is given the promise of having 12 tribes, which he does have, the 12 tribes. Esau, on the other hand, is a cunning hunter. He despises the birthright. He sells it for nothing, for a pot of soup, etc. He doesn't speak to his father pleasantly. He gives pain to his parents by the people he marries. He is a violent person, etc., etc. And Rav Hirsch asks, he says, how could it be that Jacob turns out so wonderfully and Esau turns out so terribly? They had the same upbringing, they had the same education. He says, that is why they turned out differently. Because they had the same education. Esau needed a different type of education than Jacob. Jacob is calm, contemplative, meditative. He is very happy to be reading all day. That's what I was like when I was a kid. He was very happy to read all day, etc. But Esau was not like that. He needed to be active. He needed to get out there. He needed to be exercised. He needed to exercise sports, wrestling, taekwondo, judo, jiu-jitsu, sumo, karate, etc., ninjutsu. That's what he really needed. Now, the truth is, Rav Hirsch says, had it been recognized at an early age what Esau really needed in his education, they would not have put him in the same classroom as Jacob. They would not have given him the same teachers as Jacob. Now, Esau needed something totally different, and he could have turned out as a good person. He could have used that energy, that athleticism, that aggressiveness for something good. He could have been a very good politician. There are politicians who are good. Hard to believe, but there are good people. He could have been a good politician. He could have been a military leader, an ethical military leader, and there are many of those. So the problem was that he was treated in exactly the same way as his brother. It worked for Jacob, but what works for Jacob doesn't necessarily work for Esau. What works for Esau doesn't necessarily work for Jacob. That's a lesson for every parent and every teacher and every educator and everyone, which is that chanoch l'na'ar al pi darko. Educate the child according to his unique path. And that's very difficult to do in a classroom. You have 20 kids in the class, 30 kids in the class. Very, very difficult, if not impossible. But parents can do this, and parents are obligated to do this, to look at each child. What are their talents? What are their characteristics? What are their personalities? What are their propensities, etc.? And try to educate that child, to deal with that child, to raise that child al pi darko, according to their personal, tailor-made situation. And then, God willing, you'll have a Jacob who turns out to be a good Jacob and an Esau who turns out to be a good Esau. He was not predestined to be bad. That is not true. We have free will. No one is born bad. No one is born good. We are born pure, morally neutral. And it is up to our educators and our teachers and ourselves eventually to turn that into something good, or God forbid we could choose the opposite. So Esau was not born bad. He was just born lively, aggressive, etc. Nowadays, maybe they'd medicate him, etc., or something like that. But that's not the idea. That's not the goal. The goal is to educate the child according to his way. V'gam ki yazkin, and as it says in Proverbs, when he grows older, lo yasser mimena, he will not turn away from what he has been taught, because it's been taught according to his way and her way. That's a radical lesson, which unfortunately should not be radical, but is a radical lesson from Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch on this week's Torah portion. This is Mordechai Becher with the Gateways Parsha Vlog.